Welcome to Mark's Moments Video Library. These videos are intended for the exclusive use of our agents here at Realty Executives Arizona Territory. The videos are designed to be a brief overview of frequently asked questions and topics from our agents. If you are in need of a more in-depth discussion on any of the topics in our video library, please call one of our members of our management team. The information on these videos is intended to be used as a guide, not a substitute for legal advice. Thank you.
Welcome to Mark's Minutes. I'd like to talk a little bit about buyer broker today. Number one, if you get a buyer broker, that's a great idea. Make sure it's completely filled out. We've had the cases where agents have had a buyer broker, but there have been some gaps in them where the buyer didn't sign acknowledging the buyer broker, or something was left not filled out and made the buyer broker unenforceable. A buyer broker is sort of a mirror image of a listing agreement, except with the buyer. So you're actually engaging with the buyer for a finite period of time to be their agent. And then if they buy a property during that time, they would owe you a commission. And if they buy a property without you, then you would be owed a commission. So the buyer broker works with a buyer. So a lot of times when we unfortunately find that maybe a buyer wrote an offer with another agent and they got it accepted, we think that that other agent owes us a commission or a referral fee. But the buyer broker agreement is really between the buyer and you, the agent, not the other agent who might have written the offer. So sometimes if we find out that there's another agent involved, we might try to contact them and let them know that you have a buyer broker and that you would be willing to release the buyer from the buyer broker if that other agent agrees, that other brokerage agrees to give you like a 25% referral fee or something like that. So with the buyer broker agreements, you also can't interfere until the transaction closes. You can't interfere with the closing of a transaction with a commission dispute. So that's could be an ethics issue there. If someone has a buyer broker agreement, you as an agent need to be careful, and some agents are more careful than others. But once you're aware that somebody has a buyer broker agreement, you need to kind of back off. You need to realize that you cannot interfere with the agency that that other brokerage has with that individual or individuals with buyers. So I know everybody doesn't do that. Sometimes agents will try to advise the buyers on how to get out of a buyer broker agreement. Again, you don't want to be advising somebody how to get out of an agreement with another brokerage. All you can do is say that as I cannot, represent you, or I cannot work with you until and unless that other broker were to give you an unconditional release. So you want to be careful you don't cross those ethic lines about violating that agency relationship with the other buyer. Also, there's a very, very little known statute that probably most attorneys and most brokers and most agents are unaware of, but there is a statute, again, fancy name for a law, that states that if an agent is aware that a buyer assigned a buyer broker with another brokerage firm, then that agent must give the buyer in writing a notification that they may be liable for substantial additional commissions to another brokerage. And again, I think that's probably hardly ever done. But if you are the buyer broker and you've got a buyer broker agreement, these are the kind of things that we would probably like to use to employ to try to press the buyer or the other agent, because again, there's some ethics issues if they're interfering with your agency, but then the buyer also is obligated to pay the commission if they breach that contract and purchase a property through someone else. But also the ethics comes back to the other agent. Odds are they did not give that buyer something in writing notifying that buyer that they are aware that they would be liable for, or may be liable for, a substantial separate commission. Again, buyer brokers can be a little tricky, and especially if you have one and you find that the buyer is not adhering to it. So before you get too far into it, give a call to one of us in leadership, and we'll try to help and see if we can guide you through it. Again, we got to be careful not to interfere with any transaction that's in escrow, so we don't end up being the one that's in some ethics violation or violation of some other rule or code. Again, if you have any questions, as always, feel free to contact any of us in leadership. Thank you.